We need to add that. Kathy, can we add that on the, here?
Sue?
Here.
Nancy?
Yes.
John Heverly?
Yes.
John Holt?
Here.
Kathy, so maybe we can add that under item 2 on the next agenda, so the roll call, can we add that?
Instead of one.
Yeah,
Oh, I see.
call to order, then the roll call. Anyway, time for the voluntary pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're on item 3, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting minutes of January 7th, 2013. Do we have a motion to approve those, or is there any
I
changes?
so move. Second.
It's been moved by Member Strand, seconded by Member Flint to accept the meeting's minutes of January 7th, 2013. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now we need approval or a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of January 22nd, 2013.
So move. Second.
Been moved by Member Flint, seconded by Member Strand. Any, all those, we need a vote. Any amendments to those minutes or changes? All those in favor of adopting those?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes. Okay, today's meeting, is there any amendments? And if there isn't, we need approval of the meeting agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to add on the agenda somewhere, and I'm not too particular where, you've got a SEPA and HIDL report. It could be done there on page III, which would be 13C. But I'd like to discuss SEPA and whether or not that agency thinks it's a public agency or not for public records and public meetings law. I'm quite concerned about that.
Would it be good to have under council discussion if we're just going to discuss it?
Well, I will also ask that we send a letter to SEPA and express the city's, or the borough's, position on that, if I can persuade the rest of you to go along with that.
Okay, so maybe we should put it under council discussion if that works with you.
That's fine, wherever.
Okay, that'd be B. It's a SEPA discussion. Thank you. Any other amendments? Okay, we need a motion to approve today's meeting minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the today's meeting agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Member Haverlick and Member Strand. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we've got one amendment to the meeting minutes. We're going to add something under council discussion. Okay, now we're on to public hearings and bid awards. There's 2 public hearings today, and we're having this the second public hearing on these 2 ordinances, 2013-1 and 2013-3, and that's because there was a change after the first reading. Is there anybody that wants to talk about Ordinance 2013, implementing an area-wide sales tax? Seeing none, that public hearing on that ordinance is closed. Public hearing on Ordinance 2013-3, providing for the installation of elected officers and appointments to vacancies. Anybody want to talk to that? Seeing none, we're done with that public hearing. Is there any visitors' views related to the agenda today from the audience? Seeing none, we'll move to item 7. Is there any visitors' views unrelated to today's agenda? Seeing none, that moves us to board, commission, and committee reports. Today we have a report from the Transportation Advisory Committee Chairperson, Dave Kinsinger.
Good afternoon, I'm Dave Kensinger, Lot 1 King Channel subdivision, now part of the borough. Anyway, I want to give you a brief update on the ever-changing marine highway system. I attended a Marine Transportation Advisory Board meeting in Juneau, and then also Leo Luzak and I together and independently had conversations with quite a few different legislators in Juneau at the time. Basically, the then council endorsed us trying to kind of stem the decline of our ferry service. And we had two proposals. One proposal was calling that we have 2 vessels be dedicated out of Prince Rupert May through September, and the second one was dealing with fast vehicle ferry service, the Fairweather. The first one met with widespread support. It has a lot of benefit to the entire region, not just to Petersburg. So it's an easy thing to do. It's just kind of a no-brainer. It will have no impact whatsoever on us this year because the way they do the scheduling and, more important, the layup status of the vessels, you have to be a year and a half out if you really want to have any impact on changing the schedule. The Fairweather proposal is up in the air, and the reason for that is because the Fairweather is dead. Well, it's what they call it in extended layup status right now, which basically means that the engines are timed out. They've gone through 7 passes. They're in a whole bunch of litigation over it, and they've been very closed-mouthed about it. Because they are in litigation, they've known they've had this problem with the engines from the day they received the vessels. It's a 2-year time period from the time when they decide to buy the engines till probably when it can actually be back in the water again. So the Chiniga, the other high-speed ferry, can be bored out to a few more passes. I don't know what they're going to do. They won't tell us what they're going to do. So I think there's a good possibility there probably won't be a Fairweather for a while, period. So we really didn't pursue that a whole lot. But if we do want to do that, it's going to take a lot of effort by the community to convince DOT to continue to bring that down here. It's a very expensive vessel to operate. If they don't have the ridership on it, they'll discontinue it. And basically, I guess my only thing I can say to the council is if we want to continue to maintain any semblance of ferry service, we're at, right now with the summer, our level of ferry service, you have to go back to the inception of the system to find the least number of sailings. I mean, literally, you have to go back to 1963 when they first started operating. And then I will continue to remind the council the ferry system isn't a transportation system, it's a political system. And so if you want to have service, you have to be in at the table constantly reminding them that that's what you want to have. And it's unfortunate. All the representatives and senators that we talked to endorsed what we were saying. They were very supportive about it. And if we can't get anything accomplished, then we'll have to go back to the table, and we're going to have to ask them to intercede with us with DOT on it. You probably have heard in the news all the other things that are going on with the ferry system. The canceling of the contract to build another, started out as a day boat, then it turned into this huge vessel. It wasn't a day boat, it wasn't a mainliner, and the governor had said all along $120 million period. The project was inching up to, depending upon who you talk to, $150 to $200 million. So the state was going to pay for the entire project. Why? I don't know. They could have used federal funds, but they chose not to go that route because they wanted to have it built in Ketchikan. So now what they're going to do is they're going to go all the way back to the drawing board again, and they're going to try and design 2 day boats. And by day boats, that's a vessel that only runs 12 hours. And they're going to have a preliminary proposal available by mid-session for Southeast Conference. There's been a lot of discussion about this. There's a lot of other side issues that are going in on this, like Juneau access. We have a new commissioner of DOT, a new deputy commissioner. They've completely reorganized DOT, and we're kind of back to the days where they're running the ferry system and making all the decisions out of the governor's office again, without any public input. And I think at some point in the community, we need to continue to tell our representatives that we want them to include us in the process, that they should also include the Marine Transportation Advisory Board in the process, because that's a good way for them to avoid making a lot of mistakes, costly mistakes. And hopefully they'll do that. And you guys got any questions or any direction, I'm here.
Any questions?
Mr. Mayor? Dave, I have two questions.
Mm-hmm.
One is, you mentioned we should be very involved in this process. You know, I agree, but since the fast ferries are basically dead in the water, what options do we have, because there are only so many boats?
Well, what they've done over the last 5 years is every year they've cut back the numbers of weeks of service. Basically what we have right now for service is one vessel out of Prince Rupert and one vessel out of Bellingham. And then they add another vessel out of Prince Rupert. And originally they had agreed to run it May through September. That's kind of what everybody hammered out in the region 8-9 years ago. And that was decided that was important. That's what we defined as core service at the time. And the department was supposed to do that. This year they cut out 4 weeks in May, a week and a half in June, and the entire month of September. And then on the Fairweather was originally promised to be running twice weekly to here from May through September. And this year they're going to run it from the 1st of July for 10 times on Tuesday. I think takes it sometime into September. So they really can't cut it a whole lot more. The thing they can do is they can just stop stopping here and go right by us. So, I mean, I think what we need to do is, if we want to have ferry service, we have to remind them that they do have some obligation to us. I mean, we have more vessels than the system has ever had. They're spending more money than they ever have before. But yes, we're getting a very minimal amount of service. And the past deputy commissioner, when we sent him our request for service, he wrote back a reply and said, well, you got 7 stops a week, what more do you want? So I think we have to remind them that we do need more than the service that they've been providing us. And I mean, if we don't do that, and if we don't squawk and we don't scream, they'll cut it some more. I mean, you know, you're right. I don't think they can cut it anymore, but I've been surprised so far. So.
Does that translate to, we'll have 7 ferries a week then?
Yeah, that's north and south, but the thing that you also have to evaluate, and that's very difficult, is you just can't count the number of stops. Like if you're in Juneau and you want to go to Petersburg, you know, a lot of times you have to go through Hoona, Sitka, Cake to here, whereas in years past we had direct ferries that went straight from Petersburg to Juneau and then Juneau back to here. I think right now there's like 1 northbound and 1 southbound a week. You know, all the others either stop in Cake, north or south, or they stop in Sitka, you know, going south. So it's not the same type of service that we had in years past. You can't just strictly look on a chart and count the number of stops. And the other thing you always have to do is you have to look and see how the spacing is.
Right.
If you have 2 southbounds on the same day, well, you know, that's great, but you know, if you miss one, I guess you can get on the second one, but it doesn't do a whole lot for providing service to the community. You know, it's unfortunate. You know, what has to happen is, as long as the ferry system's run out of the governor's office, every time you get a new governor, a new deputy commissioner, a new commissioner, you're basically starting from ground zero again. You have to re-educate them. You have to say, look, we're here. We need to have this done. And it's only going to get harder. The vessels are 50 years old. Plus, their newest vessels, the 2 high-speed ferries, are probably not going to be operating. I mean, there's a lot of issues, and it's all kind of cascading. Fortunately, the state's had a lot of money. They've been able to bankroll the system and keep everything running, but I know a lot of you can remember in years past when budgets were tight in the state, that's one of the areas that they cut, was funding to the marine highway system. And if you don't have that money, then the only option they have is to tie up more vessels. So that's my concern, near term, and then long term. You know, then you got all these aging vessels that are falling apart, and we do not have an aggressive program for replacing them. Actually, we have no program for replacing any of them. So
Thank you.
there's some big issues.
Any more questions of Member Holt, did you have a
Well, I
question?
don't have any questions, but I do want to first thank Dave for his service. I mean, this is an important issue to bring back to the Assembly of Petersburg. And I'd like to thank Leo, who's on vacation, so I guess he won't hear that directly, because both of you folks have been keeping us informed, and that's been quite helpful. And secondly, I think the board should give direction to the city manager to work with our lobbyist and to work with this committee to put all the pressure on Squawk as loud as we can up in Juneau for both short-term planning and long-term planning. Having watched this in Washington when I was there, when some of the ferries down there died and there was no replacement plan in place, we are looking at a long-term disaster when some of these big ferries go to the end of their natural life.
Yeah, I agree. It is kind of a mess right now, especially with,
I think Dave summed up the mess very nicely.
right. Any other questions of Mr. Kinsinger?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I
Member
have
Flynn.
one. Dave, are we going to have the two out of Rupert this summer, or we're
Well,
too
we
late
are.
to ask for that?
Well, no, what's scheduled for this summer, sometime in June it starts,
Oh,
and then it ends the end of August.
Okay.
And the reason that service is important, it's important to everybody that ships perishable stuff. I don't use the ferry to ship my product up north, but a lot of the grocery stores use the ferry to ship perishables north. And then, of course, what's really important for our community is for shipping fish south. And, you know, when they're restricted to 2 southbounds a week on the Prince Rupert run, it makes it really tough because, as you guys know, they have to, the week before, those fish are still swimming around out in the ocean somewhere, and it's hard to pinpoint, when fish are going to arrive and when you need them to get them on a ferry. And that's why we need to have the 2 vessels out of Rupert for the majority of, I mean, it'd be nice if we had it for 9 months out of the year, but, this is doable, I guess.
I have a question for you, Dave. Is your committee going to have another meeting before the week of the 25th of February, when the next MTAB meeting is? And you could give us some kind of a schedule. We could visit that issue on our next assembly meeting on the 19th, come to a consensus, and we could send it up then.
Right, we've pretty much given, if you want to be, yes, we can definitely have a meeting, but I guess what I need from you is more specifically what you want us to do.
Well, I would like to have the Transportation Committee come up with a schedule of sailings that they would like to see. Not that it might get us anywhere, but at least we'd have your input. We could make a decision on it, and that week I'm going to Southeast Conference as well as Leo, I believe.
Right, and I was tentatively, I've been a member of Southeast Conference for 20 years, so I was tentatively planning on participating too. But we have done that last summer. I mean, we sat down and that's kind of what we went up to Juneau and said that what we wanted was 2 vessels out of Prince Rupert, May through the end of September, and then the high-speed ferry running into town May 1 to the end of September on Tuesdays and Fridays.
Right, well, if they have to row it, it probably won't make it.
Yeah,
or
but
something.
that's like probably new. But I think what we need from you guys to do is just remind everybody. And then Robert Venables, who's the chair of MTAB, will be here tomorrow. So
I know.
yeah, you can remind him too as well. Although,
So I guess we could, if you could write a letter, or even if it's reiterating what you did to the council, and then the assembly could take action on the 19th, so we have an official position on it. Maybe that would help.
All right, that'd be good. And then if you want us to take up any other issues, I know there's several looming. Just let us know, and then we can definitely schedule a meeting before the 19th.
Okay, well, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time. Okay, now we're on to the consent agenda. There's one item on the consent agenda today. It's local approval of renewal of the Joan Mai Restaurant alcoholic beverage permit. Is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Member Haverlick, seconded by Member Strand to approve the only item on the consent agenda. Do you call the roll, Kathy, on this?
Nancy.
Yes. Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Sue,
yes.
John Holt,
Yes.
and John Haverly.
Yes.
Okay, report of other officers. Student Representative Stephanie Funt. Sorry it took so long, Stephanie.
That's quite all right.
Oh, she's playing hooky, maybe.
Hello, my name is Stephanie. I'm the student council rep for this school year. I would like to share about what the science program has going on right now. The science, Joni Johnson is heading up a Tsunami Bowl group. It's a group of, actually we have an A, B, and an A team and a B team. And they have been studying, they both are doing like a 20-page research paper, and they're leaving on Thursday to present in Seward, where they also have like a quiz off on national ocean science material. And I don't know, some of the kids in that include Tyler Lantine, Dan Cardenas, Kyle Hagerman, Diane Murph, Nicole Peterson, and many other underclassmen, but that's the A team in specific. Also, Joni Johnson is sending kids in her biology class and her genetics class to a science fair in March, and they're presenting genetic research projects. I believe that one, for instance, is has to do with the genetic variances in herring and what that looks like and how it affects fisheries and such. Also, we had a poetry out loud competition. It's a national competition, technically. Miss Kata, our librarian, I think headed it up, and there was about 8 kids or 9 kids who participated. Diane Murph won, and we're sending her poem actually by recording to Juneau, where there's another competition, and the regional finalist will go to state, and then there's a chance to go to a national competition, where I believe there's a lot of scholarships involved. So props to Diane Murph. Also, Jazz Fest. We had our jazz band just returned from Sitka this weekend. They performed with all the other jazz bands and jazz choirs from Southeast. Also, Bud Bergen was first chair in the all-state jazz band. Kind of a big deal. I believe he soloed for most of a song. It was pretty wild because everyone was cheering for him, and so that was a good time and a highlight for Bud in his senior year. Lastly, basketball is there's, I believe that the girls are hosting Mount Edgecombe this weekend. You can go to the junior varsity game at 6 o'clock and the varsity game at 7:45. So the school and the basketball players would love to see the community there, so please come. Also, the boys are traveling, I believe, to Mount Edgecombe, where they will compete. Homecoming is at the end of this month also. And that is it. Are there any questions?
Is there any questions of this month?
No, it's an excellent report.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Those of us that don't have kids in school, so that'll help.
Thank you.
Okay, that moves us to a report on it's an update on collective bargaining with the IBEW, and that will be presented by Mr. Hogue. He's our lead negotiator on that. One thing I wanted to mention, just for kind of a clerical thing, I guess it mentions city a lot in the report. That should probably say borough.
Well, it started out as city, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'm just, just for clarification.
And we did have a tentative agreement that the references are going to be switched.
Wonderful.
In the final agreement. I'm pleased to say that we've resolved basically all the language issues, and we still are working on monetary issues. I'll brief the assembly at exec session on those. Okay. And the ground rules require that when you think at whatever time we think is appropriate, that the tentative agreements that have been reached be ratified by the board. So these tentative agreements, which are part of your packet, and I'm pleased to say that I think we've made significant improvements in the contract language, be presented to the board, and I certainly would move that the board would ratify those tentative agreements.
So today, this is basically just a report, and then we will have this on a future agenda?
Well, you can. I was hoping to get it done at
Well,
once.
maybe we need a motion to approve what is presented to us today.
I would move that the board ratifies the tentative agreements as presented to you.
Okay,
Second.
is that in the form of a motion? It's been moved by Member Hogue and seconded by Member Flint to approve the, what do you call them, Mr. Hogue?
Tentative
Tentatively approve
agreements.
the Okay, tentative agreements, all right. Any discussion on that by any other assembly members? Will you call the roll, Kathy, please?
Mark,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
John Hammerlich,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
John Holmes.
Yes.
Okay, that is approved. Now we're moving on to the mayor's report. We're still seeking letters of interest to fill vacancies in some elected offices. The borough continues to seek letters of interest from qualified borough residents to fill vacancies in elected office until the first regular borough election in October of 2014. All letters of interest should be submitted to the mayor or borough clerk no later than 10 a.m. Thursday, February 14th, 2013, for assembly consideration at the February 19th meeting. Anyone appointed to an elected seat will be required to file a public official's financial disclosure statement within 30 days of taking office. And the seats to be filled, the vacancies on the assembly, there are 2 vacancies. We have 3 letters of interest submitted so far for consideration. They're from Cynthia Lakadakis, J. Stanton Greger, and Gerald S. Laban, however you pronounce that.
Laban.
Excuse me.
Laban.
Laban, got it. And that's to enable the assembly and the community to become familiar with the candidates willing to be appointed to the vacancies on the assembly. There will be a question and answer right earlier in the meeting of February 19th, and existing assembly members are asked to submit any questions that they would like to ask of the candidates to the clerk no later than 10 a.m. Thursday, February 14th, in order for the candidates to have advanced knowledge of the questions to be asked. They can come up with their answers. The hospital board, there are 3 vacancies on the board, 1 letter of interest received from Christine Kissinger, and there's still 2 more seats that would need to be filled on there. So hopefully more people will put their names in. Planning Commission, there are 7 vacancies on the commission. 4 letters of interest have been submitted so far. They are from Dave Kinsinger, Susan Thomason, Donna Maloit Laban, and Ron Bushman. So we still need 3 names there if people are interested. Seeking letters of interest to serve on the Land Selection Committee. The borough is also accepting letters from individuals interested in serving on the Land Selection Committee. The borough will receive an estimated 1,700 acres from the state that can be used as the borough determines. 5 letters of interest have been submitted so far. They're from Sam Bungie, Rick Braun, Jim Strumdahl, Ron Bushman, and Liz Cabrera. Yes, Kathy.
There is 6 on there. I missed Dave.
Kinsinger's letter of interest for
Oh, on
that.
the land selections. Okay, so we'll add Dave's name to that list as well. Thanks,
you.
Dave. Then there's a declaration of vacancy on the PEDC board. The resident member at large position for the Economic Development Council is vacant. There is an assembly appointment with a 3-year term. Again, letters of interest to fill the vacancy should be submitted to the mayor or the borough clerk. And there's going to be a meeting here in town. It's not really to make any decisions on anything, but there's people coming from around Southeast at different capacities for a regional electrical energy roundtable. The meeting will be Wednesday the 6th at 3:30 in the fire hall, and it's a meeting. It's kind of an opportunity to proactively look at the past and future resource developments and discuss electrical generation and the hydro consumption as it currently stands. So, the Wrangell mayor has retired. He is going to be one of the people coming to this energy roundtable. It will be his last official function, is what I understand. But Mayor Don McConaughey has recently retired from local government, and on behalf of the Petersburg community, we sent a letter of farewell thanking Mayor McConaughey for his 14-plus years of local government service to the Wrangell community. There's the letter here. Pretty brief. I could read it. I was surprised to hear the other day when I called the Wrangell Municipal Office that you had retired due to health reasons. On behalf of the Petersburg Borough Assembly and community, I thank you for your many years of service to our closest neighboring community. Your efforts for and contributions to the Wrangell community since 1998 have been admirable. Our thoughts are with you and your family. And I want to add one other item under the mayor's report. I'm sure some of you have seen it in the news. Longtime Cake resident Clarence Jackson has passed on. And I'd like to extend our community sympathy to Cake on the passing of Clarence Jackson last week. Clarence was the longest-serving board member to Sea Alaska Corporation, a professional fisherman, and an avid supporter of subsistence rights. He will be greatly missed. So, with that, we are up to the manager's report. I'll turn it over to Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Transient Room Tax Committee announced the availability of just over $8,100 from the TRT receipts. This will be awarded to qualified nonprofits. Applications for the grants can be picked up at the Petersburg Finance Office or at the Borough on the Borough website. Sandy is following up on a report that we got that the University of Alaska may be actually able to conduct an inundation study at no charge. The downside to that is it appears it takes them a very, very long time to do it. So we're trying to get enough information to decide if this is a route we want to go. It'd save us a lot of money and give actually their students some good experience, but we need to know a little bit more. What we hear is SIC has been waiting about 3 years for theirs. So we're also when Jim returns, we'll be working. We've received a proposal from AT&T as well as some other vendors on improving kind of improvements to our emergency operations center, and we want to move it from Mountain View Manor to the new fire hall, and we'll need to do some fairly minor stuff, but things that should make that operate a little more smoothly. Sandy and Jim will be working on that when he gets back off vacation. Tara and I met, and she's continuing to work with the architect on developing the bid package for the furnishings and equipment for the new library. So we're at that point. She'll be meeting with the teen advisory group to kind of get their feel for and comments on the furnishings for that teen area. We'll be using a state, it's an, I can say an agency, but it's like a co-op we're a member of that pre-bids all of this stuff so we can move fairly quickly. They've already arranged discounts that are 40% off list prices and stuff. So we're just getting the package together to take a look at it and make sure we are ordering what we want, and then we'll get that in front of the assembly to ratify. We've had a local resident, and this has been talked about before, about some concerns about the Haugen and 2nd Street walking traffic, especially as it relates to as the library gets built. Public Safety Advisory Board and the Library Board may come back and ask the Assembly to provide a letter of support to making appropriate changes to improve this issue. This will be talking to DOT. We're in kind of a comment phase right now on some future work that they're going to do. Carl's kind of gathering those comments, but we may want to add this to the list to make sure that we're keeping that in mind as particularly children traffic might go up with the new library being where it is. I've asked our federal lobbyist to look into there was an article that popped up that about how FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program, the future of those. At this point, it appears there's somewhat of a movement to move the National Flood Insurance Program away from the government to the private sector. We don't know what that means. May mean higher insurance rates, or it may mean nothing, but as it relates to our community in particular, or I should say Alaska overall, there's been a really, really long delay in getting FEMA flood maps updated. That's not something we can do ourselves. We rely on FEMA to do that, and those maps are very much out of date. We were trying to push this along as part of the borough's agenda in the sense that if we're redoing comprehensive plans, talking about inundation studies, it's a really good time to update those flood maps. We just not sure we're going to get too far at this point. FEMA has put together a committee internally to kind of look at stuff like that. I've asked Leo to try to get involved in that and work with the state officials to maybe move this along as well. We, based on a request of our Ray Matuszewski, our Juneau lobbyist, we asked Wayne Jensen, our architect on the police and jail building, to put together a little trifold brochure. Talks about why we need a new police station and jail and what we're looking at. That brochure should be in my hands. They're going to deliver it to us in Juneau, so we don't have to carry it. But I had them go ahead and print 50 copies of it, and we can get more of those, so we can start distributing that here locally too at some point. This is really designed around going to other legislators that are not ours to hope to get support in this legislative session to help us fund the library, or excuse me, police and department and jail. They're not going to be overly interested in our big capital projects list, but we thought maybe this is a way to get their attention on a very, very important project for us. Pump Station 5 replacement project is out to bid last week. Bid opening is scheduled for February 26th. And Carl is working with PIA on something that we've talked about before. We've got to learn a lot more than we know today, which is going to commingled recycling, something we think would be beneficial if we can make all the details and the costs work out. It's not as simple as just telling everybody to dump all their stuff in one bag. We've got to work out the details, and we're going to be actually beta testing some things to see how well they work. And that's it, unless there's questions.
Any questions of the city manager on his report? Seeing none, we'll move on to unfinished business. Under unfinished business, item A is the Borough, the Juneau appeal on our borough boundaries. The court has issued its briefing schedule. City and Borough of Juneau's brief is due by February 28th. The local boundary commission and borough's briefs are due by March 29th. It is anticipated a hearing on the matter may not occur until June at the earliest. So we're kind of up in the air on what's going to happen there yet. Future transition items. The manager has proposed a means to obtain public participation in determining if advisory boards should be retained by the borough. Consideration for the approval of the process is addressed in the agenda under item 14F, and we've got an addition to our packet today that the borough clerk has provided to us. The staff continues to review means to provide residents with access to participate in future meetings, either via telephone or internet. And the questionnaire is made available at the January 15th Borough Open House welcome reception. Asking for opinions and ideas on several borough matters are available at the finance office and borough website for anyone who wishes to submit their comments and ideas. State funding. Governor Parnell has placed borough transition funding in his proposed 2013 supplemental budget. The budget amendment is not official until approved by the legislature, but it seems like that will move forward smoothly. Item B, redistricting. There's no information on that subject at this time. SEPA DeHittle and Associates Operation and Maintenance Report. There's no new information on that. And that brings us to unfinished business. Item D, it's Ordinance 2013-1. An ordinance implementing an area-wide sales tax in the amount of 6% throughout the Petersburg Borough and providing for the administration, collection, and reporting of the sales tax. This is the third and final reading. This ordinance, number 1, adheres to borough charter and transition plan requirements that the former city sales tax become an area-wide tax within 90 days of the borough incorporation. So we need a motion to approve so we can have discussion, right?
Ms. Mayor,
Yes.
I move we approve ordinance number 2013-1.
Second.
Been moved by member Flint, seconded by member Strand to adopt ordinance 2013-1 in its third and final reading. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Nancy.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Sue.
Yes.
John Holt.
Yes.
John Heberlecht.
Yes.
That passes 5-0. And item E, ordinance 2013-3, an ordinance providing for the installation of elected officers and appointment to vacancies in the elected offices of the Petersburg Borough. The ordinance conforms to the Petersburg Borough Charter requirements and is needed to assure that appointments to vacancy are made within 45 days. The ordinance does not apply to any of the advisory boards of the prior city, public safety, harbors and ports, library, utility and parks, and recreation, and etc. There's many, many committees that we have here that we will be addressing in the next year. Per Borough Charter 19.08C, the Assembly has up to 1 year to determine by ordinance if each of these boards will continue to be on a borough basis. So I'd entertain a motion to adopt 2013-3.
I so move.
Second.
Been moved by Member Strand, seconded by Member Flint to adopt ordinance 2013-3 in its third and final reading. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Mark,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
John Heverlick,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
and John Ho.
Yes.
Okay, new business, item 14. And item letter A under that is ordinance 2013-4. This is the ordinance that we voted down in their last meeting. It's been modified, but this is an ordinance implementing an area-wide transient room tax in the amount of 4% throughout the Petersburg Borough and providing for the administration, collection, and reporting of the transient room tax. This is the first reading. Entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Haverlick, seconded by Member Strand to adopt ordinance 2013-4 in its first reading. Any discussion?
I'd just like to comment. First of all, what it's doing is bringing the 4% bed tax on 15% rather than 30% of the total package. And I hope we can pass this and get it moved right along because there's a lot of misinformation in the public about this. I had a call Friday night from Marilyn Mucci, who's at the Seattle Boat Show. She had a gentleman come up to our booth and say, or she asked him, "Have you ever been to Petersburg?" "No." Are you thinking about going to Petersburg?" Well, he said, "I don't know if I should tell you this, but I was at the Sportsman Show, and Petersburg Lodges were there, and they were saying, the borough, we have a new borough now, and they're charging 30% tax on our packages, so, we get no services for this." And he said, I don't think I want to go there. And so they were trying to explain to him that, no, they didn't have the correct information. The only lodge that came and got it was Rocky Point, and they weren't at that show. And Jeff Otness happened to be at that booth with Marilyn Mucci, and he said, the other thing is those lodges couldn't exist without Petersburg being there, and right now the Petersburg lobbyist in Washington, D.C. is working to retain the essential air service with Alaska Airlines, which is how you would get to any of these lodges. So yes, the Petersburg Borough does do things for the lodges, and I don't know if they convinced that guy, but and then they said, you can also do charter fishing, you can do B&Bs, you can do hotels, and you can rent boats, and there's, other options too. But anyway, this needs to get taken care of promptly.
Any other discussion on ordinance 2013-4? Member Hogue?
The change to 15% in 4.33.030B came about as doing some ad hoc number crunching to say we want to make sure that the transient room tax is not inordinately high on the lodges, but we want to make sure that it's somewhat close to what somebody would pay if they were renting a room in town. And the 15% seemed to produce that number, recognizing that for some of these lodges the rooms are basic, but other lodges that may come or go have very luxurious rooms that could easily surpass what you can find in town. So this seemed to be a way of doing it, and it is very much like Member Haverlick's suggestion last time at the meeting I missed, or was in by phone I should say, which I felt like I missed. in that by putting a percentage in there as opposed to a fixed dollar amount, we simply don't have to revisit the issue again. So that was at least my thinking that went into the 15%.
I agree, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I ran the numbers, and it does compare very closely with the hotel numbers, and
Yeah.
hopefully the lodge owners will be agreeable to it, so.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, as
Yes.
well, it also puts us at or lower than every other community in Southeast Alaska as far as a transient room tax.
a good
Sitka,
thing.
Wrangell, everybody else is higher percentage than the 4%.
So we just need to get that correct information out, so. Any more discussion on the ordinance? Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Nancy,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
John Hogue,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John Heberlich.
Yes.
Okay, under new business, item B, the resolution 2013-2, a resolution opposing USDA's preliminary findings of no significant effect on the quality of the human environment in the United States with approval of Aquabounty Technologies Incorporated's application to market genetically modified Atlantic salmon in the United States. The council, and I can't remember exactly when, but in the recent past, we addressed this as well, and we sent an ordinance or a resolution off not supporting this genetically modified salmon. Currently, the state legislature is doing the same thing, basically. What this resolution says, and also Senator Lisa Murkowski is looking for, I believe, like a 3-month extension on it, so there's more public comment period. If you'd like, I could read the whole resolution, and hopefully we all have, but we need a motion to adopt it so we can have further discussion.
So move.
Second.
Been moved by Member Haverlick, seconded by Member Strand to adopt Resolution 2013-2. Any more discussion by Assembly members?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. I will confess to no background in this area, no particular scientific knowledge about these fish, other than the fact we get nervous when you release something that's not natural into the waters. But is there some science behind the objections to these fish?
The way I understand it is they're planning on taking a gene or something from a king salmon, and well, it pretty much states it in here, and making the fish grow twice as fast. They're going to do it in Canada and then have them flown to South America somewhere, and they're supposed to be all inland. They claim they will have no chance of being released into the environment, but some people think this is just a way to move the permitting process forward for this aqua bounty. So, who knows what it'll, allow them to do in the future. Potentially even raise the fish in the United States, not sure. But if it would actually grow the salmon twice as fast.
I understand all that, but my question was, is there a scientific basis of report that we could look at as to why to oppose what they're experimenting with?
That I couldn't answer. Any other, Steve, do you have any information on that? Member Strand?
I don't have any information, just a comment about GMO products in general. This is the first thing with a face that they're working on, and I think it should be stopped before it gets out of control. They started with corn, genetically modifying, and it just doesn't sit well with me.
Any other discussion? Steve, would you like to
I can
your
speak
input?
to I had a conversation with our lobbyist who did some quick research for us on the issue. Currently what's happened is FDA has approved it's not just the production of this salmon, but the production of this salmon and not having to label it as such. So not only at this point in time can it be sold, but it can be sold as Atlantic salmon with no label on it whatsoever that says it's genetically altered. That is one of the biggest issues. That fight is going to be tough to win right now because FDA just basically has said it's no different and they're moving forward. Senator Murkowski's office is now fighting. Well, they're trying to continue that fight. They think the next step is at the USDA front from an environmental impact perspective because, as Mark said, the plan was that the salmon will be raised in pens in Panama. It is pretty clear that this company wants to potentially license the process and then sell that license to anybody who wants to buy it in any fish farm where appropriate. At that point in time, you start seeing it expand into areas where this fish could potentially be released into the wild, and they don't know the impact on what that would have on the native king population. So there's a big environmental concern from that perspective. Third is the whole labeling piece that I kind of mentioned, and then maybe a really big hit to our local community is what it does to the pricing on wild-caught salmon, as well as price at the pump, so to speak, for our fishermen. So it's an economic issue, as well as potentially a health issue or environmental issue when you're talking about the fish being potentially getting out in the open ocean. So I don't know if there's a scientific report that says this versus this. FDA has determined in their mind it's the same, and can effectively start releasing this salmon into the fish counters without it being labeled. Again, this is Atlantic salmon, but that's the story at the moment.
Member Haverlick?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I talked to a number of people with Fish and Game that had visited some of these pens down in South America, and they said they're filthy. Some of them even had to be closed. My concern would be not knowing what the genetics can do, just what people will say after getting salmon that are raised in marginal conditions. It will hurt the name of fresh fish for all of us, and I could see it really damaging the market, throughout the world, and especially Petersburg, because if people are getting salmon that's raised in horrible conditions, it's bound to taste poor, and then they're not going to want any part of it, no matter where it comes from, because you won't know.
Member Strand?
Well, if it's the same as genetically modified plants, I understand that farmers who grow organic food, if those seeds from the neighboring farms that are genetically modified get in their land, they're charged with stealing up their copyright those things, and then you can't. If something escapes, it's the wild fisher person's responsibility to keep it out of the wild fish. So I just think it's not a good way to go at all.
Any other comments from Assembly members? I know I support this resolution. When Chilean farm fish and Norwegian farm fish came on the market, it was really adversely affect the wild salmon prices in Alaska. It took Alaska State Marketing Institute years to educate the public to differentiate between the wild salmon and the farm fish. And there definitely is a difference, in my opinion, in the quality. I guess the other wild or farm fish is more affordable, but I will support this resolution myself. Any other comments from the members? Will the clerk call the roll?
John Poe,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John Haverlick,
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
Okay, it passes 5-0. Next resolution is 2013-3, a resolution supporting a coordinated public transit human services transportation plan. That's a short title. The resolution demonstrates the Assembly's support of the local committee's coordinated plan, which is groundwork necessary to apply for federal grant funds to replace the Mountain View Manor assisted living and senior housing van. Do I entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2013-3?
So move.
Been moved by Member Flint. Do we have a second?
Second.
and seconded by member Strand. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, will the clerk call the roll?
Mark,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
John Heberlich,
Yes.
John Holt,
Yes.
Passes 5-0. And next item under new business is Resolution 2013-4, designating the Alaska Department of Natural Resources as the acting plating authority for the borough. It's the short title. The resolution will leave the plating authority for all areas of the borough except Service Area 1, prior city limits, and the city of Kupernof with the DNR until the borough is able to assume the function. A borough mapping system needs to be developed and a planning commission seated. The DNR will continue to use all state regulations regarding the plating. Entertain a motion to adopt ordinance or resolution 2013-4.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt Resolution 2013-4.
Second.
Moved by member Haverlick, seconded by member Flint to adopt 2013-4. Any discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Nancy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John Holt,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
and John Heberlich.
Yes.
Okay, passes 5-0. Next item, E, authorization for participation in the Cake Access Environmental Impact Statement. The borough has received invitation from the U.S. Department of Transportation to participate with the Western Federal Lands Highway Division of the Federal Highway Administration in cooperation with Alaska DOT in an environmental impact statement process for a Cake Access Road. The Cake Access EIS is to be coordinated with the Cake to Petersburg Transmission Line EIS. A written response to the Federal Highways Division is necessary of the borough's participation. It must be submitted by February 19th. And they want an answer one way or another if we want to participate in that. So to get into more discussion, we need a motion on the floor.
I so move.
It's been moved by, and who seconded? John, did you? Moved by member Strand, seconded by member Haverlick to, for authorization for the participation of the Borough of Petersburg in the Cake Access Environmental Impact Statement. Any discussion? Member Strand.
I think that we should support the central south route that comes out of Cake and then cuts across where it ultimately crosses the Wrangell crosses Duncan Canal and crosses the Wrangell Narrows at about Tonka.
Okay, so you would be in favor of the Borough of Petersburg being involved in this environmental impact statement process?
Yeah, I think we need to make
Okay.
a statement supporting that central route.
Yes.
Okay, any other discussion on the member Hogue?
Well, I think it's a little premature to weigh in on which route, but I think we should definitely be in on the process.
Right. Okay. Any other? That's basically what this is to do, I
Yeah,
guess, just to
yeah.
authorize our participation in the process. Member Flint.
I was just wondering if the city of Kupernof was invited also. Do we know?
I don't know, but I know they were sent the information.
Yes, we were, and I'm going.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I know when we received this letter from the agency, the borough clerk sent it on to the mayor of Kupernof in case they hadn't received it. So it sounds like they had. That's good. Any more discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
John Holt,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
John Heberlich,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Mark.
Yes. Let me find out where I'm at in this small book we have in front of us here today.
Yes.
No mind.
Okay, F, approval of the process. The borough manager has submitted a proposed process in which to obtain input from affected board members and the general public on whether to retain or disband the various advisory boards of the prior city of Petersburg. Borough Charter, Section 19.08C, requires that all appointed and elected advisory boards, committees, and commissions in effect at Borough incorporation be dissolved 1 year after the effective date of incorporation unless specifically continued by a borough ordinance. So, we have a motion to approve the city manager's proposed process.
Mr. Mayor,
Member Hoag.
do we need to approve the process, or can it simply go forward?
I guess he's looking for approval of what he presented to us. I mean, I'm fine with it. But
If I may, because this affects so many of our boards and so many of our citizens, I don't want to put a process in place that the Assembly is not supportive of, is what it comes down to. I mean, I'm ready to proceed, but I think this is one of those issues you folks need to take a look at and make sure that the process I'm outlining is appropriate, or that you like.
it's a fairly simple form, but it does involve the people that were on the committees before and public input, and it looks like it would determine fairly easily whether they were a good board or commission to keep.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Member Flint.
I move we approve the manager's process for the boards.
Second.
Moved by Member Flint, seconded by Member Strand to approve the proposed process for retaining boards and committees. Any more discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
John Heatherly,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John Holt,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
and Nancy.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us down to communications, and item A under that is the Petersburg Mental Health request for funding endorsement. They are planning on constructing, purchasing, and revamping or building a new building for their work, and they would like the borough's support in their funding request to the state to purchase and renovate a facility to expand services in order to address our at-risk community members. A draft letter has been prepared for the Assembly's consideration, and I think we should look at that letter and see if that's the one we'd like to send, or do something along those lines that may be a little different. And it's on page 119. And the way it's worded, it doesn't, in my opinion, undermined our capital projects list at all, and that was a discussion we had with the one of the members of the Petersburg Mental Health Services office. So it sounds like they're going to get a lot of funding. Mr. Hoag, you might know more about what's going on than myself.
I have been here and gone a bit, and I'm delinquent in writing my letter of support.
Okay.
For them, but I think we should support them. I think they serve a valuable resource in our community. I recognize there are other now mental health providers in the
Right.
community, but these folks have been here the longest and are well established, and some of the volunteer work I do, I rely on them heavily to help the clients we both work with.
Okay, thank you. Any other input from the Assembly members? Member Strand?
I just have a question. Is this going to cost us any money?
Not to my knowledge, but we do fund them on an annual basis.
Right, but this is not a request for money, for financial support.
Not that I see, it's just a letter of support.
Okay.
Any other, Mr. Hoag?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize the signing of the letter of support for Petersburg Mental Health.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded moved by Member Hoag, seconded by Member Flint to sign and send this letter to the appropriate people asking for funding. Any other discussion? Will you please call the roll, Kathy?
Sue,
Yes.
John Holt,
Yes.
John Heatherly,
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
And Mark.
Yes. And the next item, B, is Petersburg Vessel Owners Association has a request for funding. An endorsement has been asked for the borough's support and Alaska Department of Fish and Game's budget for the request for an additional $165,000 to provide adequate aerial salmon stream escapement surveys. If approved by the Assembly, a support letter will need to be drafted. And I received a call from PVOA's director, Brian Lynch. It sounds like the state has put most of the funding required in the budget this year, but there's a little shortfall of $165,000. And it's a pretty valuable tool for them to assess the escapement in our area's salmon streams. So,
Mr. Mayor, I move that we have a letter written to support this request for $165,000.
Second.
second. Okay, it's been moved by Member Haverlick, seconded by Member Flint to draft a letter to mail off in support of the additional $165,000 to provide adequate aerial salmon stream escapement surveys. Any more discussion on the
I have the
item?
same question.
Member Strand.
Is this going to cost us any money?
I think it's asking for state funding.
Okay.
Yeah. And our letter could be worded such. Any more discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Sue,
Yes.
John Hogue,
Yes.
John Heverlich,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes. Okay, item 16, and A under that is recognitions. This agenda item is reserved to acknowledge individuals, groups, departments, agencies, or anyone for their contributions toward the betterment of the Petersburg community. Is there any recognitions today?
Mr. Mayor,
Member Hope.
I'd like to recognize the members of the Petersburg Police Department and Captain Hamilton for their work on a police item that which they worked on Thursday. And I'm simply not going to be detailed about it because of the sensitive nature, but I watched some of their planning and was very impressed with the professionalism.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your good service. Okay, and under recognitions, Member Hogue wanted to add SEPA as a topic of discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I am quite concerned about what I have read and been told about SEPA not recognizing that it is a public agency and should be conforming to both the public meetings and public records law. I mean, this is an agency that has been created by other public agencies for the sole purpose and very critical purpose of looking at coordination of power issues throughout Southeast. This is an item of quite importance. The Hiddle report has illustrated some of that. And we talk about electrifying cake, putting them on the grid, and where's that power going to come from? This issue becomes even more important. Recently, the city manager, between him and I understand Mr. Nelson, and the architect decided that the proposed plans for the police building couldn't even have some electrical heating sources in it because those heating sources might exhaust our ability to stay off of diesel. So expansion of Southeast Alaska's hydro capabilities is probably the most crucial long-term economic development item we have, with the ferries coming in perhaps a close second. And for an agency that is an intergovernmental agency, in essence, to say that they are not subject to public records and public meetings law, to me, it flies in the face of both Alaska law and common sense. And I would like to ensure that our representatives to SEPA, which I understand is Mr. Nelson and Mr. John Jensen, convey this Assembly's serious concerns about them straightening up their act, in essence. And excuse my lack of sophistication on that, but I'm pretty displeased with an idea that that they think they're exempt from the Public Records and Public Meetings Act.
I believe that was they've been, I don't know if you'd call it forewarned, but I don't think we're the only community tied into the SEPA grid that has these concerns, and so I agree with your...
Well, perhaps we can have the city staff draft a letter for you to sign and send to them expressing the cities, or these, I'm going to get my nomenclature right, the borough's concern in this area, and asking them to either conform to public meetings and public records or give us a very good explanation of why they're not going to.
Sounds good. Member Haverlick, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to put this in writing also.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting I wouldn't say the board, but the way, some of the direction that the SEPA staff is taken without board direction is kind of interesting, and I'm sure it's
And frankly, it's not a matter of discretion on their part, as far as I'm concerned. It's a matter of a mandatory state requirement.
Yes.
right. Okay, any other comments on that issue by assembly members? Seeing none. We need a motion to go into executive session. The
Mr.
assembly-
Mayor, I thought I made a motion to send a letter to SEPA.
Well, you did.
Okay, I was
okay,
hoping
we'll
I
have-
could find a
Do we have a
second.
second?
Second.
Okay, it's been, motion's been made by Member Hoag, seconded by Member Haverlick to draft a letter to the SEPA staff, and I won't go into detail, but Kathy, you know what we're looking for?
Yeah.
It's to make sure they abide by the Open Meetings Act, and it sounds like they should. Okay, any more discussion on it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 5-0, Kathy, to draft a letter and send to SEPA. Maybe it could be hand-delivered to some of them. They're going to be here on Wednesday. Executive session. Assembly will conduct an executive session with the Borough negotiating team for the IBEW contract for the purpose of discussing the balance of the non-settled contract articles and to give direction to the team. We need a motion to adjourn into executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn into executive session.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded by Member Hoag, Member Haverlick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, Kathy. We'll move into executive.